I'm hitting continue. Yes, we want to do it.
We mean it.
All right, we're live.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Christopher Constant, Anchorage Assembly for District 1. Welcome to tonight's Assembly Reapportionment Town Hall, the first in a two-part series. Tomorrow night will be at the Lusac Library. We welcome you there in person at 6 p.m. Tonight, we are going to begin by doing a roll call first of members of the Assembly who are present and the contractors. Would you please go ahead, Ms. Ross?
Mr. Constant.
Here.
Ms. Allard. Mr. Dunbar. Ms. Kennedy. Ms. LaFrance.
Here.
Mr. Perez-Radia. Mr. Peterson.
Present.
Ms. Quinn Davidson.
Here.
Mr. Rivera.
Present.
Mr. Weddleton. And Ms. Zalatel.
Here.
All right, and then the contractor team.
Mr. Wheeler.
Here.
And Ms. Reiser.
Here.
Thank you, Ms. Ross, for the role. Next, we're going to bring up a brief slideshow to introduce the conversation and process that we're going through, provide you an opportunity to understand the approach that we're taking. And I would note for the record, Mr. Dunbar just entered as well. So welcome again to this town hall where we're going to be discussing the municipality's reapportionment process and then taking public comment in an open format style where we're going to allow members of the public 3 minutes to speak. But first, we're going to go through a bit of a informational slideshow, and then we will be inviting members of the public who submitted maps as well as RDI who presented maps to describe briefly the maps that they've presented, and then we'll open it up for the public. So I am going to go through the slideshow now. So Claire Ross, would you please forward? So the reapportionment process that we've been going through so far began actually in 2020 with the US Census 2 years ago now, that documented the population of the entire American population. And the count wasn't completed on time because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which delayed the state's process in which they began their redistricting process, which was approximately 8 months delayed and did finalize on November the 10th of 2021. The charter directs that the municipality, at the time when the state final plan maps are adopted, must consider whether or not it's malapportioned. The process determines where the new populations live in the districts across the municipality and the state. And the decision was easy to make this year because in 2020, the voters passed Proposition 12, which added a 12th member to the assembly, which by virtue of the math requires that we have a reapportionment. So we're definitely in need of reapportionment. However, with the numbers from the census, if a 10% deviation spread exists between the smallest and the largest district, that is also another trigger. In this case, I believe the number is approximately 89% deviation because of the new seat. Subsequent elections will use the new maps in the district after the April 2022 election. These maps will not be completed in time and addressed in order to have this year's election be under the new maps. So next year in spring of 2023, we will have maps in place and we will have elections based on the new maps. The process involves going through, we're not quite ready for that. Maybe hop back one quick. The process involves going through an ordinance drafting effort by the assembly. We've hired a contractor to develop a series of maps. We've opened to the public the opportunity to submit maps. I'm sorry, I actually went the wrong way on this chart. And so now we are at the point where we are going to be reviewing the maps with the public, having public input, and then we will be having a committee meeting coming up soon where we will discuss the process to move towards final adoption of an ordinance which sets the new districts. Now, thank you, Ms. Ross. Next slide, please. So if you look at this, a simple deviation table, back in 2010, when we had the single member district, which I am now occupying, the district size was 26,533 people. All of the other districts, the number was in the 52 to 53,000. In 2020, the actual numbers are in District 1, my district, 26,816, District 2, 50,276, 3, 51,687, 4, 52,808, 5, 54,628, and 6, 55,032, which is a total of residency of the municipality that was counted in the census of 291,247. When you average that out, it turns into a target population for each district of 48,541 residents. So that number will be important to us. And as I said before, there's a standard deviation there of 92.81%, where my district, District 1, is 81% off the right number, and District 6 has 11.79% more than the ideal number. And again, 10% difference there triggers reapportionment. Next slide. So how are the new maps determined? Districts must be, according to the law and the charter, compact, contiguous, and relatively integrated socioeconomic areas. Equal protection and a one person, one vote must be maintained. Deviation in actual to target population must be less than 10% between highest and lowest district deviation according to federal law. A district with over 5% deviation must have compelling reasons. And finally, boundaries cannot be racially discriminatory according to federal law. So we've established a timeline that we've been hewing to pretty intently. November 23rd, we declared malapportionment at the assembly meeting. December 29th, draft maps were published by the assembly thanks to RDI. January 6th, the committee met and we set a timeline and plan for these town halls. January 20th was the deadline for the submission of third-party maps. Today, we find ourselves January 26th at the first town hall meeting, which is our virtual town hall meeting. And again, as I said earlier, tomorrow we will meet in person at the Lusac Library in the Wilde-Marston Theater. Then on the 28th, the committee will meet to review the feedback and create a plan for introduction of an ordinance with the draft map coming forward. February 15th, intent is to introduce a proposed plan map by ordinance. We've scheduled a special meeting for the 24th of February to hold a first public hearing. And at our regular meeting on March the 1st, we will hold a second public hearing. We've opted to allow for maximal public input by having 2 town halls and a number of committee meetings and work sessions, and we will have 2 public hearings before we pass and adopt the item. March 1st, we will meet to deliberate and move to adopt the plan. And then after the next election, these maps will be in effect. So next, I think the next is, how does the public get involved? How do you participate? And in big letters here, it says reapportionanc.org. That's a link that will take you to all the content that's been developed. You can see all 10 maps that have been established in the system, and you can look through them and see where the boundaries are drawn in each map. Then you can see the source of the map on the main page and download a PDF if you want to have a flat file of the maps. You can attend an open house. We have a number of people here tonight, and we'll be meeting again tomorrow. And then the residents of Eagle River will have the opportunity at the Chugiak Eagle River Town Center in room 170 on February the 3rd from 5 to 7 p.m. to have similar conversation. And finally, in every library and at City Hall in this municipality, you will find copies of at least the 5 plan maps, and we'll probably be refreshing those with an updated map after the town halls. So enough of me talking. Claire, I'd ask you to send this off to RDI now.
All right, Dennis, can you turn your camera on?
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Christopher. My name is Dennis Wheeler. I am a senior project manager with Resource Data. Resource Data is a locally grown software and project management company. We've been in the business for over 30 years. We have offices here in Anchorage, Juneau, Portland, Houston, and Boise, Idaho. On the team with me are Ashley Reiser, who's also a senior project manager, and we have two GIS programmers, Laura Warner and Leah Bauer, who are part of the project team putting together maps for the committee. I wanted to briefly touch on a couple of items with you on how this project is being handled here at Resource Data. One, we're keeping in mind some of the items Christopher touched on earlier in terms of the ultimate goal, which is one person, one vote, as established under the Federal Equal Protection Clause. In that process, we take the total population divided by the number of districts to come up with the number you saw earlier, the 48,000, and work that into our mapping parameters so that we can come up with maps that meet that criteria. Part of the process also includes making sure that we understand and pay attention to some of the court decisions. We'll be relying on legal advice from the Assembly Council if needed, but largely what we want to focus on is A, one person, one vote, and B, the Voting Rights Act, to make sure that we do not dilute or disenfranchise minority voters and their ability to have equal access to fair election results. So as we get further into this, we'll be doing some of the analysis with respect to minority voting and minority population groups within the various different districts that the committee considers. It's also worth noting that in a Alaska decision back in 2002, the court noted that newly available technologies make it possible to get ever so much closer in terms of how much deviation can be tolerated or managed, so that while the federal rule talks about being well under that 10% deviation, the Alaska courts have acknowledged that keeping in mind new technologies, we can do better. And these maps all try to accomplish that. The next thing I want to talk about the maps themselves. There are 10 maps. 6 of those have been publicly submitted. Another 4 we created here at Resource Data to prompt the conversation, to get people engaged and lay out a couple of different ways to approach the problem of expanding District 1 and yet maintain the cohesiveness of all the districts. The one thing to keep in mind here with this is that part of our task is to address how to work with the Eagle River Chugach area. You know, as noted in previous discussions with the committee, one of the difficulties for Eagle River is that it doesn't contain enough population to be a standalone district, so it needs to pick up voters moving into the Anchorage area. So you'll see some of the maps take different approaches to that sub issue within the context of building out these equally populated districts. And with that, I think we're ready to start a walkthrough of the maps. Our senior project manager, Ashley Reiser, will do that walkthrough.
Okay, Ashley, you're ready. You're on.
Okay, so I'm going to walk you through both the maps and also the process for locating these maps. We have, as Christopher mentioned, a variety of different types of maps available, and we have an online web viewer. We also have PDF maps available. So you come to the main Reapportionment Anchorage site, scroll down, and you'll see an area here where you can go to the reapportionment
Actually, I
map.
don't think we can see your screen right now.
I can.
I
Okay.
can.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay. Let me know if it's an issue with others, and we can resolve it. This is the Reapportionment Map Site. Here you'll find PDFs of all 10 maps, so the ones created by Resource Data and also the publicly submitted maps. And here there's a link to the online map viewer, and that's what I'm going to take you through now. I will dive into the maps created by Resource Data, and I'll also introduce the publicly submitted map from Matt Green, who was not able to be here. So we'll just go ahead and move through. The publicly submitted map number 1 from Matt Green is under tab number 1.
Actually, I think Matt was able to call in.
Is he?
Yeah, so Matt, if you want to dial in the number I gave you and then press *6 to unmute. And there's about a 30-second delay, so we'll give him a minute to get on.
And while we're doing that, I would just note for the record that we have been joined by Cameron Perez-Verdia, as well as Forrest Dunbar, who I mentioned before, at approximately 6:10. And it's interesting, I'm hearing from some members of the public, they can't see the maps, but I for sure can.
Yeah, it looks like we're getting that.
And are you on a Mac, Claire?
Nope, I'm on a PC. Let me try one thing. There we go. Sorry about that. Public, I'm monitoring the chat. So if anyone wants to, can you see it now? Any members of the public?
And while we're waiting, Matt Green, did you have a chance to unmute? Okay, let's just proceed then with having Ashley do a brief presentation of the map while we wait to figure out the technical issues, and maybe Matt will show up.
Okay, so what I'll do, I'll start with map number 2, which is a resource data, and if Matt does attend, then we can circle back to 1. So map number 2, the largest, this is the overview. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that we can better understand where the districts change along the borders. So the biggest changes you'll see with proposed map 2 is District 1 in red. The current district boundary is delineated in red here. It shares this boundary. So it's moving, in this proposal, it's moving south to Tudor and then east to Pine Street. It's going to take over a little piece of what is currently District 5, and then of course a portion of what is District 4. In order to accommodate that, District 4 will move south to O'Malley Road, and then District 6 will move up across Campbell Lake to West Diamond Boulevard. And you'll notice a slight change here. This is just due to populations. You'll notice that District 6 has sort of an irregular border out into the eastern area of Anchorage. The overall deviation for this map is 7.75%. The deviation represents the absolute value of the lowest deviation, so typically the most negative, and then the highest deviation added together. So it's those two numbers. This one, 7.75. For map number 3, District 1.
Go on, Ashley, briefly. I would note for the record that Mr. Weddleton, Ms. Kennedy, and Mr. Rivera are on. They're just in that interstitial viewer space, not in the inside space. So they're here though.
So map 3, let me zoom out. This is the overall view of map 3. District 1, again, you'll see a lot of changes with District 1 across the board, but in this case, District 1 is moving over to Boniface Parkway and then south to West Northern Lights. Zoom out just a little bit. So to accommodate that move, we have some movement for District 4 and for District 5. 4 is in the purple, 5 is in the orange. So 5 would move south to Huffman, and then 4 would move south to O'Malley. This area here was previously District 4.
Can
will
somebody
become-
please mute themselves? Sorry.
That's okay. So this portion of O'Malley will become incorporated with this proposal into District 6. And again, District 6 moves.
5 is in the orange. So 5 would move south.
Okay, I just muted someone else. Go ahead.
6 moves north to West Diamond into District 3. And then here you'll see a similar irregular boundary for District 2, moving slightly into District 6. And again, I'm just going over the major changes for each of these. We can certainly in the Q&A or otherwise go more into detail. Map number 4. This one, as we zoom in, we'll see that a large portion of J-Bear becomes part of District 1. District 1 also moves east here to Boniface, and then again south to Northern Lights District into what is currently District 4. District 5 here expands to the west and then to the south along East Tudor. And this is west to C Street, sorry. And then it also expands into what's currently District 4 over to Elmore, here along this road, and south to O'Malley. And similarly for District 4, it moves south to O'Malley and then takes over a small portion of what is currently District 3 here to Minnesota. And I'll mention for map number 4, sorry, I forgot to include this, but if you didn't already note it on the screen, the deviation is 2.54% for map 4. It was 4.62 for map 3. And the one we originally covered is 7.75 for map 2. All of these are less than 10. Okay, so the last map that I'll go over, unless Matt was able to join us. Here we see a different approach. So District 1 will expand to the east to Boniface Parkway, and then again to the south to East Northern Lights Boulevard. The largest change we see here is that District 5 moves north into J-Bear. So it takes on this area of J-Bear and then reduces on the eastern edge where current District 2 moves in. There's a lot of shape changes here. So again, we've got District 5 moving to the west and all the way over to Elmore Road. District 4 will expand southward to O'Malley, which is currently in District 6. And then again, where we had seen before, District 6 moves north to West Diamond. And this portion of what is currently, actually, never mind, I'm looking at the wrong boundary. So this is the current boundary for District 6, so that remains within District 6. This portion here that is currently District 4 would become part of District 3. The overall deviation for this map is 4.06%. So we'll just give you a look at the overall changes there. Was Matt Green able to join?
I have not heard from him.
Okay, well, let's move. This was the map publicly submitted by Matt Green. Here, the largest change, that's most obvious, is District 1 expansion into what is currently District 2. So it takes over the population center of J-Bear and then expands north it also, let me just zoom in a little bit so this is easier to see. So along the south edge, it follows a variety of intermediate streets. I won't go over all of these because it's quite a bit, but it extends primarily to what is now Pine Street. Okay, so zoom out a little bit so we can see District 2, another large change you'll see. District 2 that previously terminated at this yellow line would move down, taking over what is currently the majority of area in District 6. District 3, similarly to before, is reduced by this area south of West Diamond, which becomes part of District 6. District 4 expands to the east to cover all of far north Bicentennial Park and all the way east to this boundary. And then south, it's following the current boundary, so there's no change there. I just wanted to zoom in so you could see. And here we see that it's moving slightly into what's currently District 5 up to Tudor Road. So District 5 accommodates that reduction to District 4 and moves south or moves north to Tudor Road, and then terminates at Pine Street here while taking on just a small area, but a population center that is currently in District 2. So that summarizes the maps that RDI generated as well as Matt's. What I'd like to do now is welcome Anchorage Action to present their map, and I can drive it for you if desired.
So again, I think it might take just a few seconds for the broadcast version to catch up for them to know to unmute. And Claire, would you tell them again how to unmute?
Yes, and I just put the number to call in the Q&A section, but you press *6 to unmute.
And in the Q&A, would you let Anchorage Action know that we're ready for him?
Yeah, I just did that.
Thank you.
Mr. Constant and Claire, while we're waiting, I just want to let you guys know 3 times I've tried to look at the chat and it's shut down, and then I've had to come back in. So if others are having problems, perhaps the problem is the chat, and maybe if we just interrupt Chris. I don't know if people are having the same issue.
Yeah, no problem. Please do.
And also I'm seeing that it looks like Ms. Allard just joined us at 6:28.
So I am not sure what the technical process will be if we want to try to figure out ways to help these folks unmute, but I'm going to assume that they're not available right now or they can't get in. And for purposes of run of show, we should probably keep going.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have anyone called into the line from those groups. If you are listening and you're a public map maker, the number to call is 907-519-0237, and the code is 633-281-637#. We'll just maybe wait just a couple more seconds and see if anyone calls in, and then Ashley can run through the maps for us. They all said they'd be here, and I told them it'd be around 6:30, so hopefully they call in soon.
So not hearing from them, Ashley, are you brave enough to tackle describing the brief changes to the map?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm not seeing anyone else join us, so I think go ahead.
Okay, well, we'll just go down the line and start with Anchorage Action as map number 6. All right, we'll zoom out to get the overall view. All right, and we'll start with District 1. So we have an expansion down into current District 4. This is going down to West Tudor Road.
Hang on, I'm just seeing in the chat that Denny Wells and David Dunsmore from Alaskans for Fair Redistricting are on the call. So
That's great, Claire. But for now, we're on the Anchorage action map, and we'll come back to them soon.
okay.
Yep. So that'll be maps 8, 9, and 10. Okay, and so District 1 is then expanding also to the east to Pine Street, as we've seen in some of the other proposals. Scroll over. So to accommodate this change for District 1, we're going to see that reduction in District 5 west of Pine Street. We're also seeing a reduction here where down to east where the current District 4 begins was previously District 5 to East Tudor. So this will be given up by District 5 and taken on by District 4. We also have an expansion here where far north Bicentennial Park is slightly dissected, and this area is taken by District 5. Zoom out a little bit. District 3 has a similar reduction up to West Diamond that we've seen in other maps, and then this portion of District 4 is going to move south to, they indicated that it gains Arctic and Independence Park south to O'Malley, and then follows the same current boundary against Abbott Road. So District 6 has a little bit of loss to this irregular boundary. It's part of the population balance. So you'll see that in a few of these maps. And where District 6 has a reduction is again just the section of District 4 that is moving down to O'Malley. The overall deviation is 5.28. So certainly well below the 10%. And it looks like that about covers their modifications. We do see District 5 here is moving slightly into current District 2 to gain this population area. So map number 7, I believe that if the representative for Anchorage Action is not on the line, then Robert Hockema is likely not on the line.
I'm not seeing any signs that he's joined us since you started talking, so I think it's okay to go ahead.
Okay, so District 1 gains a portion of J-Bear. This is the current boundary, so it's moving into J-Bear to the north. And then it's moving south. Sorry, so I can just keep this so I don't make you dizzy. It's moving south to Northern Lights Boulevard here, which we've seen previously. Here, District 5 is losing this section, which is taken over by District 1 expansion. So this is Pine Street again. So what is currently to the west of Pine Street that's in District 5 would become District 1. Slide over here. We'll focus on District 3 for just a moment. So District 3 sees this reduction up to West Diamond Boulevard that is taken on by District 6. It expands into this area, which is currently District 4, and then also takes on this section of District 4 over to C Street, I believe. Yeah, C Street right there. District 4, we see a little bit of change. It takes on this area that's currently District 5. And then we see this expansion far north by Centennial Park. This chunk that was currently in District 5 becomes part of District 4. And then District 4 moves south to O'Malley and gains Independent Park. And the only, so District 6, let me just zoom out a little bit so you can see this. So District 6 loses a fair portion of area here that becomes part of District 2. And then here, just west of current District 4, you see that District 6, this is the current boundary. District 6 takes on this portion just south of Diamond Boulevard. And the deviation, total deviation for this map is 7.12%. So again, below the 10%. Just zoom out one more time. So the next map that we have is Alaskans for Fair Redistricting. Claire, you mentioned they're on the line.
Yes, David said he's on, so let's give him a couple of seconds to catch up. And David, you can press *6 and go ahead and start speaking.
Welcome, Mr. Dunsmore. I'm not sure what the technical challenge is. Is Dave saying anything in the chat?
No,
Yep.
he texted me to let me know he was here, so he's definitely here.
David, if you're having any trouble, can you put something in the Q&A to let us know? Oh, he's trying to unmute.
I know Claire said this, but it always gets me, even if you press unmute on your iPhone.
Hi, can you hear me?
There
There
we
we
go.
Yes.
Yeah, my apologies. Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I think you can hear me now.
So yes, David, perfect. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes, all right?
Okay, thank you. And for the record, my name is David Dunsmore. I'm with Alaskans for Fair Redistricting. We are a coalition of public advocacy groups that has been involved in redistricting in Alaska since the 2000 cycle at the state level, and we appreciate for the first time the municipality of Anchorage really having a public process to allow for a fair redistricting process. We followed the state map process really closely with our coalition members, and included groups like Alaska Public Interest Research Group, AFL-CIO Alaska, and Native Peoples Action. Our principles that we applied in the state and that we're applying in our proposal for the municipal map is we want to protect communities of interest and ensure that intact neighborhoods and groups have the ability to meaningfully have their voice heard and meaningfully influence elections. We want to keep similar socioeconomic neighborhoods in the same district. And we want to make as close as possible every resident's vote to be equal in weight. And that's why we've worked hard to create a map that would have the lowest population deviation and the most equal vote of any municipal map in the history of the municipality. We created compact and contiguous districts with natural boundaries following major thoroughfares and waterways. And our map corrects two systemic flaws that have plagued Anchorage since incorporation. We allow J-Bear to no longer be with Eagle River, where it has no gates that provide public access, and instead allow the service members of J-Bear to be in the same district as the services they utilize off base. And we create districts that implement Prop 12 in a way that provides meaningful representation for communities of downtown Fairview and Mountain View without diluting the votes of Fairview and Mountain View. Our District 1 is North Anchorage. It's very similar to the existing District 1, except that it adds J-Bear and areas of East Anchorage along the gates into J-Bear, and adds portions of Mountain View south of the Glen Highway so that more of Mountain View can be in the same district. It allows, as I said, it allows service members to be in the same district as the services they use off base, and it is the only option for District 1 presented that does not dilute the votes of the diverse communities of Mountain View and Fairview by adding substantial portions of Midtown or West Anchorage to the district. Instead, we add similar socioeconomic neighborhoods in East Anchorage along the J-Bear gates to not dilute those communities. And Mr. Chairman, I know you have spoken very eloquently in the past in educating people about how, you know, the redlining that has taken place in Fairview and Mountain View. So I think, you know, we worked really hard to create a map that will, you know, will empower those communities by having similar socioeconomic groups to allow them to continue to have a district that provides them a strong voice. Our District 2 is the Chugach Mountains District. The main change is it removes J-Bear as all of the public gates to J-Bear go into the Anchorage Bowl and none into Eagle River. So this corrects that major socioeconomic flaw and allows us to instead have the hillside areas north of Elmore, as well as Stuckagon Heights, within this district where they're better socioeconomically fit, because this will allow most of the limited road service areas to be with the Chugach Eagle River district, which has, you know, the largest rural road service area, to allow a district that is compact, contiguous, and provides the residents of service areas a really strong integrated district. There's very little ARTSA in that district. There's a tiny bit of ARTSA that goes north or that goes above Elmore Road that has been included just because Elmore was a clear boundary. For the West Anchorage district, we use Minnesota as the boundary for most of the district. We allow both sides of Cannibal Lake to be in the same district, and removes Midtown districts on the east side of Minnesota, Midtown neighborhoods on the east of Minnesota from the West Anchorage district. District 4 is a really compact Midtown district that has the Midtown neighborhoods between Minnesota and Elmore and north of Lore in a compact and contiguous district. District 5, the boundary extends east out to Elmore to capture more of the communities that residents generally consider as East Anchorage into the East Anchorage district. And District 6 is the South Anchorage and Turnagain Arm district that includes the Turnagain Arm communities, as well as Rabbit Creek, Bayshore, Ocean View, and Clatt. And we is able to have the Abbott Loop area up to Lore Road be in with the South Anchorage district where they more naturally fit. And if Mr. Chairman, if you or committee members have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
So we're going to reserve questions for after the public has had an opportunity to weigh in, but we would ask that you stick around in case members of the public have questions that might germanely be answered by you or members of the committee.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next map is Mr. Wells. Are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You have the floor, and for this map, 5 minutes should you desire.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. My name is Denver Wells. I live in Sand Lake, currently in District 3. When I saw the initial 5 maps, the first thing I noticed is that my neighborhood is included in the South Anchorage District 6 in all 5 drafts. I live on North Shore Drive in the area bounded by Diamond to the north and Campbell Lake to the south. My neighborhood elementary school is Kincaid in Sand Lake. My neighborhood is geographically and economically connected to Sand Lake, but is separated from South Anchorage by a lake. I would actually have to transit District 3 to get to the proposed District 6. I understand that the redistricting task requires imperfect local compromises, but having 0 options where my neighborhood was rationally allocated prompted me to give feedback. As I looked at the initial maps, I realized there were other patterns beyond just my neighborhood. All of the proposed maps, at the time that I crafted my maps, I only saw the 5 initial ones. They all either advantaged Eagle River and Chugiak with higher proportional representation, or they combined Eagle River and Chugiak with other dissimilar communities. And all but the initial map number 1 specifically disadvantaged Muldoon in inverse proportion to the advantages given to Eagle River. I decided I could not just give universally negative feedback without providing a positive alternative. I'm not a politician or a community leader. I don't have a personal vested interest other than the positive effects that it aggregates to the community by having equitable representation. I made the maps using the link provided by the State of Alaska Redistricting Board, which led to a website called Districter. My target was to make 6 districts which were conceptually similar to the current districts: District 1 downtown, District 2 Eagle River, District 3 Sand Lake, District 4 Midtown, District 5 Muldoon, and District 6 South Anchorage. I made one map which was focused on keeping the downtown district as compact as possible. That's Jenny's plan number 8. The downtown district is bounded by Jaybear to the north, which led to a website called Districter. My target was to make 6 districts.
Sorry, I just muted the wrong person, I think.
District 1 downtown, District 2 Eagle River, District 3 Sand Lake, District 4 Midtown, District 5 Muldoon, and District 6 South Anchorage. I made one map which was focused on keeping the downtown district as compact as possible. That's Jenny's plan number 8. Still there?
Denny, I don't know if you can hear me. I tried to mute the new person who joined us. There you go. So let me mute.
Okay. It said I got muted and then I got unmuted, I think.
There you go. There was interference. I tried to mute someone, but I muted you. But you're back now. Sorry about that.
I'll turn off my speakerphone and maybe that'll help. Okay, hopefully that'll help. So District 1 was bounded by let's see, where was I? So I made my first one for District to keep District 1 as compact as possible, bounded by Jaybear, Boniface, Northern Lights to the south, and the Alaska Railroad Corridor to the west. It's a very simple and straightforward district. District 2 is Jaybear, Eagle River, Chugiak, and Stuckagon Heights. Jaybear and Eagle River, Chugiak and Eagle River are bedroom communities for Jaybear, a very rational pairing, and Stuckagon Heights is unfortunately discontiguous with the rest of the district, but the demographics there and their issues align very closely with, especially with the upper reaches of Eagle River Road and Highland Road. District 3 is bounded by major roadways and the railroad starting at Kincaid Park and extending as far east as necessary to get the proportional population at Arctic and C Street with a stretch along the railroad. District 4 starts at Northern Lights and heads south through Independence Park, again bounded by major roadways. District 5 is the rational part of Muldoon along Muldoon Road from the Glen Highway to Tudor. But because I placed an emphasis on the compactness of District 1, I had to include a portion of the UMed district between Northern Lights and Tudor out to Lake Otis to balance populations. And then District 6 is the balance of the community to the south, South Anchorage and Girdwood, similar to the current orientation. After reflecting on this map, I realized that I wanted to make a second attempt that emphasized the compactness of District 5 for Muldoon rather than the compactness of District 1. This is Denny's map B, map number 10. I started with the core Muldoon corridor in District 5, bounded by the Glen Highway and Tudor, and I extended it west as compactly as possible until I hit a rational population target at Pine Street. The southwest border along with District 4 is on the South Fork of Chester Creek, so that's the only portion that's not bounded by a major roadway. I adjusted District 1 so that it extends south to 36th, aligning with the southern border of District 5. I adjusted District 4 to add the UMed area and made small tweaks elsewhere in the map, but again, hewing to major roadways, waterways, and railroad corridors. My background is as a real estate photographer. I'm in homes throughout the Anchorage Bowl. I've shot more than 2,000 homes in the municipality in all parts of town, from the tiniest rundown single wild trailer to the most amazing $1 million homes, from places in the densest parts of South Addition to the furthest reaches of the Eagle River Valley, from homes so new the paint is not yet dry to so old that they're on the registers. I was mindful of that experience as I crafted my maps. I encourage you to be mindful of the whole community as you are drafting your final official maps. I'd urge the adoption of maps that are fair and compact, and I don't believe that the initial 5 drafts met those criteria, and that's why I made my proposed maps.
So Denny, do you want to now present your second map? Or did you do both? I'm sorry, I was checking in on who all is attending. Did I miss your second presentation?
Yeah, I kind of breezed through it pretty quickly. The second map was focused on creating a compact Muldoon district. Yep. So it's the Muldoon corridor out to Pine Street instead of out to Boniface.
Okay, thank you.
And that
perfect. So I'm going to ask you the same thing. Please stick around. Some folks at the public might have a germane question, members of the committee as well. But I want to briefly turn back the clock. I hear we have Matt here now. Mr. Green, are you here?
And if you are here, press *6 to unmute.
Yeah, I believe they just unmuted me now.
Yep, we can hear you.
So, Mr. Green, we did a brief presentation on your map without the benefit of having you here as the drafter. So we're going to go ahead and let you make a presentation on your map.
Okay.
5 minutes is
right. Okay, yeah, that's no problem. Just a quick introduction. My name is Matt Green. I've worked on some redistricting projects in the past, including the Idaho Independent Redistricting Commission in 2010. As now in 2020 done some redistricting in South Carolina for the state and for some specific counties. Basically here, I took a lot of the current districts and just kind of adjusted them for the 2020 census. A lot of the areas are going to maintain a lot of the similar geographical areas that they had in the past. The map does not split any precincts. The map was not drawn with any incumbent protection data used. So even though it's easy to find, I didn't use that in producing these maps. I did try to keep areas of interest together that do try to respect the community council districts, as well as keeping certain geographical parts of Anchorage together, like downtown, East Anchorage, West Anchorage, and the southern part of Anchorage as well. That's kind of basically what went into my map. And as far as the partisanship of the districts, none of the districts are drawn in such a way that they would benefit one political party over the other, unless it happens to be, like, just as an example, downtown Anchorage, where there is a concentration of more progressive and more Democratic voters. Same thing would be true in Eagle River, where there's a more concentration of conservative or Republican voters. If you did an analysis of it, you'll find a lot of the districts are competitive. A Democrat or a Republican could win those seats.
All right. Is that your presentation?
That is it.
Thank you. So we're asking folks to stick around who've made maps, because members of the public may have germane questions. Members of the committee may as well at the end. So, and then finally, I believe Mr. Hockman might be here. Mr. Hockman, are you here? I believe Claire said *6 is the unmute function. If we don't hear it pretty soon, we'll move on.
Hey, I think that might have worked. Can you hear me now?
Yes, excellent, Robert. Thank you. As I've said to the previous speakers, as maker of the maps, we'll let you have 5 minutes. You can have, since you submitted 5 minutes for each if you need, but as Mr. Dunbar's often fond of saying, that is a ceiling, not a goal. And so I'm going to hand you the floor now.
Okay, I can go through the personal submission I made and then the one that we made on behalf of Anchorage Action Next. Is that cool?
Sure.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start with the Anchorage, or the one that is submitted on behalf of my name. I would start by saying that both of these maps were drawn without any consideration towards partisan influences, addresses of current incumbents, anything like that. The goal of these maps were to draw two different concepts based on what most Anchoragites would consider the intuitive boundaries of each respective region of Anchorage. So that was kind of the goal. Another note is that these were, a lot of folks are drawing maps with consideration to really tight deviations. I think there are other important considerations to whether or not a community actually gets represented, and whether or not the numbers match up correctly, I think is one of the lesser important considerations, as we saw with the state redistricting process. Whether or not communities feel actually represented by their districts seem to have been a lot more important to the outcome of those maps. So I tried to emphasize that as well. That said, all of the deviations keep below 5% for each district, if I'm not mistaken. So with regards to the map under my name, the biggest difference between this map and the current assembly maps obviously would be that Hillside is included with the Eagle River Chugiak Peters Creek district. For years and years, the reapportionment process has sacrificed the Eagle River Chugiak district's lack of population by adding in some portion from Muldoon. Muldoon always gets the short end of the stick with regards to reapportionment. I think it's time that a different area eat the burden of the way that Anchorage's population is divided up. So I thought a more appropriate socioeconomic binder would be the Hillside area. It's not even all of Hillside, it's just Hillside east of Hillside Road. These areas share a lot of infrastructure, like a lot of infrastructure zones, including things like drainage. During an assembly meeting several weeks ago, assembly people Allard and Weddleton were heard on record talking about how closely similar and socioeconomically tied Hillside and Eagle River actually are. So, I would point to several examples that have been used during, open session to the public here on this body for why those two areas are actually socioeconomically tied. But they're far more tied than, the North Muldoon precinct that is currently included in the Eagle River Chugiak district, or Centennial Park, or other areas that are extremely diverse, a lot poorer, et cetera, et cetera. Hillside does not share those distinctions in the same way that Muldoon does. I think it's far more appropriate inclusion. Downtown also, another big difference is that downtown includes a bit of J-Bear. J-Bear, there's this common misperception that J-Bear belongs to Eagle River. And just because there's a lot of folks who reside out there and, share links with the base, so do many of the key entrances from Anchorage to the base, including the Government Hill entrance. So I think this is an appropriate sort of divider between the downtown districts, so that downtown doesn't have to come in and eat inappropriate areas of Anchorage. For instance, the university area of Midtown absolutely probably does not belong with downtown. Areas of Turnagain and Spenard do not belong with downtown. I think this is a much more appropriate way for downtown to get its population, given how the numbers need to kind of portion out. There are other natural dividers that separate these districts in ways that aren't currently now. For instance, to the closest, let's see, where is this? Yeah, a lot of people think the difference between West and Midtown might be Minnesota. I divided it along C Street. I think those are perfectly acceptable ways to divide the West District. South divides itself off of Diamond Boulevard and doesn't eat into Campbell Lake the way the current district does. However, there is a little bit of Independence Park and a teensy little bit of Elmore included into the Midtown District. But other than that, it divides just along Diamond Boulevard. The difference between South and West in Midtown right there. Yeah, that's that map. I don't need to do 5 minutes on this. It's pretty straightforward. I really tried to emphasize compactness here. Pretty happy with how this map turns out. And then we can go ahead and switch maps now. I think this is kind of adequate for the map under my name. And the other map was submitted on behalf of me for Anchorage Action. This is sort of a community, people's map that we tried to piece together. Jarl Silver's name is attached to it, but we got feedback from Anchorage Action's group, like several members, and try to get as much feedback as possible, as opposed to one or two people who know a lot about mapping just sitting in a room and coming out with what they think Anchorage's assembly districts ought to look like. Yeah, a lot of the districts looks familiar to the current map. Downtown doesn't take in any of Government Hill, and there is no Southside Eagle River blending at all whatsoever. The main differences are that Midtown comes down into a bit of Independence Park, which comes out into Independence Park. The divider between South and West, as per the previous map, is Diamond Boulevard. Comes down a little bit farther than does the current assembly districts dividing South and West. Downtown comes all the way into kind of central Midtown and a teensy bit of Rogers Park and Airport Heights. It returns Airport Heights fully to the downtown district instead of splitting it between Midtown and downtown, as is the status quo, the divider on DeBar. So it fully absorbs those communities, which are far more socially economically integrated. And then, of course, it divides East Side by the difference between Mountain View and essentially the Russian Jack and Wonder Park area. Also, a map that tried to emphasize compactness over just arbitrary deviations. But again, the deviations are perfectly within the federal limit of 10% and definitely the recommended limit of 5%. So, yeah, this is kind of where we saw. There were some other priorities that were reflected in this map. For instance, keeping the North Muldoon finger, which currently belongs to Eagle River Tubiax District. We think schools like Bartlett and the communities that reside there deserve to be integrated into East Side. The Stuckagen Heights Basher area, or the Stuckagen Heights area is kept with East Side. They're connected road access still. Yeah, that's kind of the gist of the map.
All right, thank you very much, Robert. And the same, I'm going to ask you to stick around because I know we do, for folks, have some questions that they're going to want to pose to the drafters of the map. And that's great. But before we do that, we really want to turn to members of the public. This is a town hall forum for members of the public to speak to the maps and to the committee. And so I'm not sure the technical process, and I hope it's flawless, but if it's not, forgive us, as we are just experimenting with this new medium for ourselves. So Claire, Ms. Ross, would you go ahead and attempt to move towards the Q&A process?
Sure. I think the first person in line was Mr. Dunbar, and then Mr. Rivera, and then I have a question in the chat that I can read out loud after that.
So for all of the attendees out there in the public, before members of the assembly make comment, I would like us to focus on members of the public. So if there is a question in the question bar for the Q&A, let's start there. And if any of the attendees out there have questions that you'd like to pose to any of the maps to the committee, please begin putting them into the question form so that we can answer them. So Ms. Ross, what's the first question?
Okay, the first question is, I have an overall process question about if or how community council boundaries would change. Are community councils considered during this process? Will they be changed to align with assembly districts after a new map is adopted, or will community council boundaries remain the same?
So I can go ahead and field that, and Dennis, you might have an opinion on this as well, but that would be more like verging into your legal work, so I don't want to put you in a weird spot. The Alaska Supreme Court has ruled, I believe, that there is no consideration for community councils in the drawing of appropriate boundaries for the reapportionment for the municipality. That community councils are not a subdivision of the state. They're manufactured by the municipality in an effort to create independent nonprofits that are working to provide better communication streams with the municipality. And so the answer is no. Since I've been involved in the public process, I have not really seen much realignment of community council boundaries. What instead tends to happen is precincts realign, and then who is attending at a community council will change by virtue of who is representing that area. So if anyone on the committee or Dennis or anyone has a different opinion or additional information, now would be the time. Go ahead, Mr. Dunbar, I see you can add to that.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. So I think one part of the question was, does this precipitate a change in the community council boundaries? And my understanding is no, that it doesn't. And that is a separate, unrelated process. And I'll say that, right now, many of us have community councils that span different districts. So I think the best example for us is University Area Community Council. So it is about half in my district and P. Peterson's districts and about half in Meg Zolotel and Felix Rivera's district. And so all four of us attend, and conversely, there are districts that Chris knows well that only he attends because they're only in the downtown. And so, yeah, it certainly will impact, but they are very different lines and very different processes. And I wouldn't imagine that many or any community councils would realign after we did this change.
So and I concur. In the chat, we have Ms. Quinn-Davidson saying that the same in her district, North Star, and actually in 2 districts, or 2 precincts in her district or councils. And so, and Mr. Dunbar alluded to my experience, and you know, there are some community councils like the university area that he mentioned that sometimes have 4 assembly members and 6 state representatives from the legislature who show up. And in my district, you get 1. And that was the impetus for the question, Proposition 12, was how do we fix this so that it's more fair and equitable, which is the driving force behind this major reapportionment. Dennis, I see you're unmuted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would refer folks who are interested to Anchorage Municipal Code Section 240.040. In subsection B, paragraph 1, there is a requirement for a comprehensive review of district boundaries at least once every 10 years after the census and after the assembly redistricting process is done.
So then the answer that my takeaway from that is that it's natural that we would have a look at the boundaries, but it's not based on this process. It's part of the succession of this process.
Without giving legal advice, that would be my read as well.
All right. Yeah, I'm not asking you for legal advice. Thank you for your service on the project. Please, if there's any members of the public in the Q&A who wish to ask more questions, now would be the time to get your question on the table. Are there any more questions?
I don't see any other questions right now.
Okay, so next then, the first to put his name in the queue of the members will be Mr. Dunbar, but Claire, please monitor the questions because we certainly want to prioritize members of the public.
Will do.
So go ahead, Mr. Dunbar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we go back to Matt's map? And Matt, are you online? Can we both be speaking simultaneously? I'm not sure how the. So I tried to zoom in on this map here, and you know, unfortunately, I don't have the full file in front of me. And so I was wondering, you know, looking at the hillside portion for District 2, and you know, this map goes all the way down to Girdwood, right, and adds Girdwood to District 2, and you know, I think that would be a fairly significant change. And I'm wondering, so I guess my 2 questions are, is there a portion of hillside that is already added to District 2? And if so, could that be expanded so you wouldn't have to add Girdwood? Or is there any other way you could see that perhaps you could leave Girdwood, which seems much more contiguous, obviously, with South Anchorage? Is there any other way you could make up that population for District 2?
I think you're basically right there, that you would really have to go into the hillside to get Girdwood paired back in with what it has traditionally been. South Anchorage there. The reason why I shifted that is because I attempted to keep the base all in one district rather than dividing it into 2. And this kind of was a side effect of that, was having to go, instead of going in, like other people have already said and explained, that rather than pairing it with parts of Muldoon, instead I decided to go to down to Girdwood instead for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so there, just to reiterate then, there is no part of the hillside that is in District 2 in your map?
I don't believe so.
Oh, wait, actually, you know what? Now I'm looking at the Rabbit Creek area. I mean, I guess that's considered the hillside, but my District 2 brethren will have to, my District 6 brethren will have to help me out on this. I suppose that is part of the hillside there, right? Is that considered hillside?
So I don't know that Mr. Weddleton was able to get into the team's live event in a manner that he can comment. I don't know if Ms. LaFrance has an opinion on that question.
Looks like she is typing in the chat.
Oh,
and
thank you, Mr. Chair. And the question for us was about which section there is considered the hillside.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
sorry, Rabbit Creek. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there is. So I guess I just didn't read it closely enough. So there is a part of the hillside that is part of District 2 in Matt's map. It's just the the sort of southernmost part of the hillside.
It's a pretty big chunk.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so next in the queue, I believe, was Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to members of the public for attending. I guess, as we go through the queue, if members of the public have preferences for a particular map that they like, I would be very curious to learn that. So hopefully members of the public are able to put that in the chat. And then, or in the Q&A, and Claire can hopefully share that with us at some point. But so, from my perspective, I appreciate all of the presentations. There was one statement that I think I really resonate with, which is, and I think it was Mr. Hakama that made this statement. It was that people need to feel like they are represented, and I think Mr. Hakama used the current litigation with the state redistricting map regarding the Senate pairings of the Eagle River and the Muldoon district as an example. And I think that's interesting. And it's an interesting idea to explore as we consider these maps. In particular, and I'm just going to be blunt, because we really haven't had too much of a chance to talk about this in a public forum. So I'm just going to do that now. For me, it appears that there was a lot of interest and concern about making sure folks feel like they're being represented in most of the districts as presented, with perhaps a little variety here and there, where maybe some of the hillside is being put in Eagle River, etc. But I think when it comes to Midtown, for a lot of the maps, it almost feels like Midtown is getting a little bit of the leftovers. So I would be curious to hear from the map drawers, wanted them to address how you thought about Midtown, and specifically about the idea that the people who live in Midtown need to feel like they're being represented by Midtown representatives. And I'm just going to bring up two neighborhoods just to put it out there, in particular Rogers Park and Airport Heights. Those, I can say, as the current representative of those two neighborhoods, they do not want to be in any other district but Midtown. And most of the maps, except for one, puts them in a different district. The one that does not is the map by Alaskans for Fair Redistricting, and I really appreciate that map. So I would love to just hear from the map drawers, if they could just speak on the record about how they came up with the Midtown boundaries. Thanks.
So if you're one of the drafters of the map, Mr. Hakama, Mr. Green, Mr. Dunsmore, go ahead, or Mr. Wells. I heard you for a second. There you go. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Yeah, Mr. Rivera, I feel like that the kind of the visceral sense of kind of the Midtown getting the dregs maybe is not necessarily unwarranted. And in the two maps that I drafted, like the northern boundary of where the Midtown district was kind of dictated by kind of the expansion of district number 1 to be a full district instead of a half district as it is now. And I think Airport Heights in particular, I imagine will probably end up in most people's conception of a downtown district, with the downtown needing to expand. But I hear you for Rogers Park, and it's definitely an area that I tried to be mindful, I tried to draw boundaries at major roadways to kind of keep lines as clean as possible. Yeah, so in one, kind of the bulk of Rogers Park is in the Midtown District, and in the other it's not. Just kind of the way that the population centers, as I was trying to balance population, worked out.
Thank you for that response. Anyone else who's a drafter of the maps?
Hi, Mr. Chair, this is David Dunsmore.
Go ahead, Mr. Dunsmore.
Hi, thank you, and through the chair to Mr. Rivera. I appreciate your comment. I just note that most of the choices we tried to make sure that all the choices we made worked for both of the districts that would be affected by any individual choice. But the choice that I think allows for the easiest of respecting Midtown, which also then has the effect of keeping of not diluting Mountain View and Fairview's voting power, is putting J-Bear in with the North Anchorage district. That not only does it correct the major socioeconomic flaw of J-Bear being put in a district that it has no gate access to, but that population allows you to keep the natural boundary along Chester Creek to not have to make District 1 eat into Midtown. So as the committee works on a final map, I think that is an important consideration to keep in, is that keeping J-Bear as a whole in the North Anchorage district allows for the best protection of neighborhoods across the entire municipality.
And anyone else, any of the other drafters? Mr. Hockman?
Am I unmuted?
Yep.
Okay. It's kind of hard to make clear comments based on the two that were just made. I guess I would say I agree with a lot of Danny Wells's rationale about the fact that downtown needs to expand somewhere, and I disagree with the notion that in order to do that, in order to protect some communities in Midtown over others, you need to put the entirety of J-Bear with downtown. I think downtown clearly shares socioeconomic ties with many areas of Anchorage, and in order to reflect that, we put part of J-Bear, specifically the access towards Government Hill, in with that district, and left other areas of J-Bear with other districts in an intention to do so. I just don't obviously Rogers, a lot of people would consider Rogers Park to be Midtown, but the areas just west of that are also Midtown, and no one is really speaking up for those areas, like these areas of Fireweed that follow Eagle Street, these areas of almost West Anchorage that some other people, including mine and Anchored Actions, have in their districts. Like those areas are also arbitrarily cut off as a result of the way that downtown expands. Like I would have liked to have followed Chester Creek as the natural difference between Midtown and downtown. But again, that would have required pushing downtown either east or north. And I don't think those decisions were more justifiable than cutting off an area like Rogers Park. So that's pretty much my justification, is trying to split the interest of what would happen if you move those districts around, which affect 3 consecutive communities. So, which address those 3 consecutive communities. So, yeah, I'm not against moving it around, but that was pretty much the justification, is in order to follow consistently the boundary of Chester Creek, you would have had to draw out a lot of those communities out of Midtown that follow south of that, including Fireweed and Rogers Park, which would have required me to make decisions that I didn't think were also justifiable in terms of who should get represented in what districts. So, yeah.
Thank you. And it's never easy to figure out how to divide up these numbers, because in some ways it's arbitrary and we just have to do the math. So the last person we haven't heard from, I think, was Mr. Green.
Yeah, so I think I'll just echo what basically has already been said, so no need to repeat a lot of it, but at least I did try to keep some commonality with some of the streets for coming up with the Midtown area, like Abbott, C Street, but there are a few where I think it hits Arctic and even goes a little further in some points, but then mostly uses part of Northern Lights and then Chester Creek for that. But that's all I have to add, or at least mine.
All right, thank you very much. Now I understand. Thankfully, there's a new question in the Q&A, and then we'll come back to members in the queue.
Yeah. There was also a couple comments that Pat Redmond earlier in relation to the community council's question said, community council boundaries are part of the bylaws of each community council. Any changes in boundaries require a lot of discussion and research by the community council. And then this comment might no longer be valid. It was in relation to a discussion about the hillside, but Robert Hakama pointed out that map stretches into areas the census would define as hillside, at least according to their tract shape files. And then we have a question from Gretchen.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you just said.
Well, it only made sense in the conversation that when we were asking what was hillside or not, and he pointed out that Matt's map stretches into areas the census would define as hillside.
I see. Okay, thank you.
And then the question we have next, Mr. Constant, you can probably answer, is Girdwood on these maps? It looks like Girdwood is not pictured on many of the links I follow from the Muni page that lead to the PDF files.
Yeah, so it is in fact on all 10 of the maps as they're rendered. It might not be in the PDFs. We can review that, but in the viewer and for all the actual maps, yes, it is closely considered. It's part of, depending on which map you're looking at, District 5 or District 2, but for the most part, District 5.
I think there's one more question. Just give me a minute. I'm putting one more thing in the. Oh, I don't know if this was meant to be read aloud, but a person really liked Robert's map number 7 as a former resident of Muldoon and Airport Heights. They think it's a good commitment to logical geographical barriers.
Thank you. It's a good comment. And I misstated, it's District 6 or District 2, not District 5. Once again, Midtown getting dragged all over the map. So, okay, any more questions from members of the public?
I think that's it. I did want to point out that Miss Kennedy sent a map of JBear that might be useful for this conversation, and so I put that in the chat.
All right, and maybe afterwards you can send that around because I can't see in that Q&A portion at this time, so I don't know what it references specifically, but that's okay. So going back up in the internal chat, I had a question from Mr. Dunbar and a question from Ms. Allard. Excuse me, not a question, a comment from Ms. Allard. Ms. Allard, you could go ahead and put your comments that you wish to in the record. And if that doesn't work, Ms. Kennedy, do you want to tell us what the map is related to JBear?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'd be happy to do that. I don't know how many people are actually familiar with JBear, that it's actually, you know, 2 bases that are, well, a base and a post, an Air Force base and an Army post that have been joined together in front of what would be considered kind of a little bit of a, well, anyway, that's not the point. My point is there are multiple housing areas throughout JBear. And the largest one would be the one right out of Government Hill Gate. There's another one that's closer to Post Road Gate. And then there's a smaller one that's close to the Boniface Gate. And then the larger one is on Fort Rich that has basically their own access. And that's really part of what I wanted to clarify too. There's really 5 gates from the JBear area. 3 of them are in the Elmendorf side. 2 of them are at the Fort Rich side, and the 2 in Fort Rich do not empty into the Anchorage Bowl. They empty into the Glen Highway. So anyway, I just kind of wanted to do a little clarification, but when I was doing that, I was thinking it probably would be better to see where the housing areas where residents actually live on J-Bear, because the vast majority of J-Bear is not housing or people. And those housing areas are pretty spread around throughout J-Bear. I would say most of them are probably on the Elmendorf side, but I couldn't tell you right now which ones are more, which actually of those housing areas are actually filled with people right now. I know even retirees are allowed to live there now. So anyway, couldn't really tell you exactly where the populations are concentrated, but we should have that information as well. So it might be something that RDI could help us with, to have a good map of J-Bear while we think about how we're trying to split them or keep them together or whatever we're going to plan to do with them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Mrs. Allard is saying she can't make comments on the phone. We've had a couple of technical glitches, and just would note in her comments that she had some statements about somebody said she said some things that she said she didn't say. And then she asserts that District 2 is Eagle River is District 2. It's a separate city. And so we do have a new person in the Q&A, but before we move there, because time is, I skipped over her. I'm going to ask Ms. Zalatel to ask her question.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. And this is a question that I would even be willing to get the answers offline for any of the authors of the maps, but it's really the inverse of Mr. Rivera's question. As I think about Midtown and those who identify amongst my constituents as Midtown, a lot of these maps bring borders down near O'Malley, pretty far south, and I really would like to know more about the rationale. Is it just simply a matter of numbers? But in terms of identity of the district, I feel like getting that far south, I'm not sure we would get a lot of constituents that far south to identify or would think that they would be considered in Midtown at that point. Some of it's just the nature of being in the middle and squished, but you know, and again, we are getting close on time. So if that's something best left for offline, Mr. Constant, I'm okay to take those via those types of answers via email.
Sure. I do. We have about a half an hour left in our slotted time. So if members, if the map drawers want to discuss that, that would be great. Or not, and that's okay. Oh, go ahead. Who's this?
This is Mr. Wells again.
Hi again, Denny. Go ahead.
Yeah, in considering the Midtown maps, I reflect back on like my history with this town goes back to my great uncle who was principal at Anchorage High School, which is now West High School, when the earthquake happened, and like they would be shocked at what we consider South Anchorage and what we consider Midtown now, just as the city has grown. And so yeah, the you know, Midtown going south to O'Malley does seem a little bit weird. But that said, in particular, I included Independence Park in the Midtown district because I feel like it's a pretty similar relatively high density housing area, similar to much of the rest of Midtown. Anyway, to me, I did not include the areas that were like outside of that are more hillside like. Just the areas that were pretty tightly focused like that. Anyway, that was my thought.
I would say for my part, when I travel south of Tudor, I feel like I'm in Homer, but that's just me and how I divide it. So I understand your great uncle's kind of how shocked he would be at how Anchorage has grown. Other map drawers?
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. This is David Dunsmore.
Go ahead, Mr. Dunsmore.
Yes, just really quickly, I think this is another thing where the different choices have ripple effects. So by putting the hillside east of Elmore into the district with other service areas and larger lot sizes. It does allow for the South Anchorage district to encompass more of the areas that I think people would colloquially say they lived in South Anchorage. So that is one of those choices that allows the boundary of Midtown to stay a little more natural and not come as far south. Thank you.
All right, so do we want to hear from Mr. Hockham or Mr. Green?
Sure. Yeah. For the two maps that are submitted on my behalf, the Anchorage Action and my personal one, the primary inclusion south of Abbott and Diamond is just Independence Park. And I think Independence Park is debatably either South Side or Midtown. So it kind of goes back to the who gets chopped and diced where. But I mean, folks on the west side of Independence Park, you can only access through driving off of O'Malley and onto Brayton/Seward going north. And when they leave that area, they hit the Holiday gas station on Abbott/Diamond and are socioeconomically connected to businesses in that area disproportionately. And that's where the east side of Independence Park, again, those folks drive north off of Independence Drive and they shop at Fred Meyer's off of Abbott, Abbott or Diamond, off of Abbott. So, I think those areas are debatably South Side or Midtown in terms of who you ask in those areas. And I've talked to people in those areas who identify as either Southsiders or Midtowners. So it's really just about the deviations, and going farther south than O'Malley is clearly Southside and unjustifiable. So this is the farthest south I think you can go without screwing with the rest of the district.
So what Mr. Weddleton put in the chat was, we call that district Midtown, but it is just as much Abbott Loop, and that Independence Park is similar to in the Abbott Loop Community Council, which I think kind of gets to the point you were just making, Mr. Hockham. Thank you. Mr. Green? Are you still there, Matt? Okay, that's all. Oh yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Okay.
You have the.
Yeah, sorry. So for a little explanation, at least behind my map and why the border, at least on mine, goes all the way down to Abbott for the most part, but is up on Diamond a little in certain sections, is mostly because I started by drawing District 1 first, and then mostly I kind of started from the edges, did Eagle River, did West Anchorage, then I did the Muldoon area, and that kind of left me with those certain chunks where the only way to get population was to go further south. And of course, with District 1 now having being the same size as the other districts, that does force movement throughout the other districts. And Midtown's in a place where really, the only place for them to go really is south to get that population.
All right, thank you very much. So that's everybody on that list. And running back through the chat, Ms. Allard says, for the record, Fort Richardson families attend Eagle River schools and shop there. As a prior resident, I can attest to that. I lived on Fort Richardson. And I'm sorry again for members of the body who are not able to get logged in. I'm not sure why the Teams Live event did that. So I do understand that we have another question in the Q&A. Ms. Ross?
Yeah, we have a couple questions now. Before I get to them, I just want to remind everyone that if you do want to have 3 minutes of public testimony, to put that in the Q&A, and I'll make sure to call your name. But we haven't had anyone who wants to testify, and this Q&A seems to be productive and people are adding stuff to it. So we'll probably just stick with that. But if you do want to testify, put that in the Q&A and we'll call on you. So the next question is, what do the representatives of Hillside and Eagle River think of something like a Chugach district that is pictured by a number of the maps? And then there's 2 more questions after that.
So, Ms. Kennedy, are you able to enter the chat or into the conversation?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Awesome, because Ms. Allard can't. So this question is pointed to you at this time. She can put her comments in the chat, I guess. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, thank you. At first blush, what I'm looking at is the fact that you have basically made a district that's about 85% of the entire municipality. And what that means for somebody in Girdwood trying to base, or the other way around, somebody in Eagle River, wherever the representative is, they have to drive through 3 other districts in order to actually connect with the people on either side. So we have a mountain in between us, but unless you're a doll sheep or just like to hike a lot, you're really not connected. So that's where I see this being relatively unfortunate. I know from my house, it's an hour and a half to drive to Girdwood. Certainly if, I live just in the kind of the beginning of Eagle River Valley. So anybody that lived further up, say Chugiak or Eklutna, they're even farther out. So anyway, it just, it becomes an absolutely massive district whereby your connection by road is pretty much non-existent other than to go through all the other districts. So that's kind of my first thought about it. I don't know if there was any more to that question or not, but I hope that kind of gives a little bit of a perspective on why I think this is just problematic just from a reasonable connectedness perspective. Thanks.
So I'm just going to jump in for a minute. John put in the chat, I hear silence. Does that mean you can't hear what I'm saying right now? Are we having a technical problem?
Coming through here, Chris.
Okay, so we had the question about the mountain, the Chugach Mountain District. I think there were 2 proposals for that, at least maybe 3. One included Girdwood. Okay, John, you can't hear me. I don't know what might have changed. So we're going to just proceed into the next question. Claire?
Just 1 minute. Okay, this one's a long one, so I'm going to publish it in the Q&A so people can read along with me. And it looks like there's more questions rolling in now, so I'll get to them.
Great. And we're running out of time. We have 23 minutes, so we have to be tidy with our time and answers.
Okay, we keep hearing about the importance of direct gate access from J-Bear to downtown, but that leads to splitting South Anchorage current District 6 into a district with Eagle River. How do people drawing these maps explain to us that direct gate access from J-Bear to downtown leads to keeping them in one district? Then that leads to DeArmond, Hillside, and Girdwood being in the same district as Chugiak. It looks like we have to decide between District 1, including J-Bear, or Girdwood, and part of Hillside being in the district with Eagle River, and that is not close road connection nor respecting communities.
Yeah, I don't think that's a question, it's a comment, and it's well put into the record. Thank you. And
Okay. The next question, with regard to the maps proposed by Denny Wells, what proportion of J-Bear's population is in District 1?
I don't understand the question, Denny. At this time, 0.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in my maps, I drew the District 1 boundary kind of right at the J-Bear boundary in Government Hill. So the Government Hill, the civilian side of that line should be in my district or in District 1, and the J-Bear side was in District 2.
Yep. All right, and I don't know how to answer the question of what percentage.
Okay. And then there was a question on that earlier question about what assembly members think about the Chugach district pairing Eagle River and Hillside. People wanted to hear from the Ms. LaFrance and Mr. Weddleton on their opinion about it.
Thanks. I'm happy to jump in. This is Suzanne, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
You have the floor.
Oh, thanks. And, I actually have similar thoughts to what Crystal expressed. It's a very expansive area. And while sharing that similarity of the Chugach, I mean, from a practical standpoint too, just going from one end to the next, I think would be a difficulty. And I am, though, very curious what some of my constituents on the hillside think of that arrangement. I haven't heard yet from too many folks, and I'm eager to have those conversations. So thanks for the question.
And John is not able to answer because he's stuck in the chat world, but I'm sure this question will be one that we can tackle tomorrow night as well. And again, I just want to reinforce, only one of the maps merges Girdwood and Eagle River Chugiak. The rest of them do, or some of them do, contemplate hillside and the north, but only one of 10 has association connecting Girdwood. Right, and so John, of course, says that he's here, and I think it means he can hear again. So I do understand that Mr. Dunsmore wanted to answer the previous question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just to the comments from the question about how do we balance the needs of keeping JBEAR and allowing service members to finally be in the same district as the services they use off base and where they have road access to, with protecting the hillside neighborhood's interests. And I think at a municipal level, and I can say this, you know, I grew up in the hillside. I was a limited road service board chair on the hillside. And at the municipal level, the road service issues, the land use issues with being on the Chugach Mountains and having a lot of large lot size private wells are a lot of the same issues that you're going to have in Eagle River, which is also has its own road service area board, so they have their own elected. So just like in neighborhoods like Valley View or Stuckingen Heights, or Talus, where they have, instead of the assembly managing of the budget for the roads, they have elected road boards. It's the same in Eagle River. So having, you know, all of these service areas as much as possible in the same district will provide better representation. That you'll have a district that'll be able to focus on the unique needs that the Chugach Mountain community share that are different from the Anchorage Bowl. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Dunsmore. Are there other questions in the chat, Ms. Ross, in the Q&A?
Yeah, there's a couple comments now. For what it's worth, as a 70-year resident of Fairview, map 10 most closely represents the district that I spend most of my time in for commerce, education, entertainment, and services. Thanks. Oh. Then we have another voice here against Turnagain Arm being joined with Eagle River. It is disjointed to have to drive for over an hour and through 4 of the 5 districts to get from one community to the other. And then another person just reinforcing that respecting the close road boundaries in the redistricting, wanting to know how respecting close road boundaries in the redistricting process leads to Girdwood, Rabbit Creek, and Chugiak in the same district. And that is all that I have in the Q&A for right now.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and keep the Q&A open for a little bit more. We have approximately 17 minutes left on the calendar to continue this meeting. Now is an opportunity for members to raise any thoughts. Anyone wish to add their commentary to the queue? Ms. Salatel has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Constant. As I'm thinking about the Midtown District, or as it moves contemporaneously with the other boundaries, I think one complicating factor I want to keep in mind, especially as it were to move south or southeast in nature, is our resident experts around limited road service areas, you know, and the like. Midtown generally represents the ARTSA, the road service area. And so to add in a limited road service area into a district that traditionally hasn't represented those provides a unique set of complications and some competing interests. Right now, Midtown has just a very tiny portion of what's considered the lower hillside and does have a little bit of interaction with Halo, but not much. So it's just something to consider in terms of kind of the unique structures we have on the hillside and in some of these areas of town that really those representatives are experts in representing those specialized service areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members? Okay, feels like we're rounding towards the end of our conversation for tonight. Go back to my note page and make sure I got all the boxes checked. I think that while it's a bit earlier than we had intended to adjourn, if there are no more questions in the Q&A, I would offer to attendees tonight that we will be in person tomorrow night at the Walden Marston Theater at the Lusac Library from 6 to 8 p.m. We will be having maps. Claire Ross has come up with a very lovely and innovative idea of having maps that are going to be flat laid on tables where folks will be able to draw with Sharpies their own suggested boundaries or thoughts and concerns. So it'll be somewhat interactive, but we will have a similar conversation. Members of the committee will be asked to sit up on the dais. Other members will be in the audience just because of room up in the room in the chamber. There will be microphones set up for people to talk, and we will have 2 hours to continue this conversation tomorrow. If there's any last comments from members of the committee, from the contractors, from Ms. Ross, now would be the time. Mr. Rivera, I see you typing in the chat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I just wanted to thank members of the public for attending today and just want to encourage folks to stay engaged in the process. Let us know which of the maps you prefer or if you think there should be changes to any particular maps. And hopefully you all will stay engaged up to and through the public hearings when we get those before the assembly. And I'm wondering actually, Mr. Chair, if you might be able to just go over some of those dates again.
Yeah, why don't we, Mr. Ross, pull up the slide deck. I think it's slide number 4.
Yes, just give me 1 minute.
Ms. Zalatil, you had a question, go ahead, or comment? Maybe that was old.
You already got to me, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. So while we're waiting to pull up the timeline, I want to take a moment to thank the members of the public who literally spent their own private time and expertise either learning or implementing their experience and skills in Districtor or the various public applications that are available for members of the public to draw maps. It's very lovely that we had 4 drawn by our consultants and 6 drawn by members of the public and organizations in support of our proposal or in support of our motion and our work to reapportion the municipality. And so I extend deep gratitude for those of you who did that work, because it certainly created a livelier conversation tonight, and it helps to provide us important information as we move the process forward. So if you look at the calendar, currently we have tonight, which we're about to wrap up, we have the town hall tomorrow night. Not on this calendar is the Eagle River Chugiak Town Hall meeting scheduled for, is it the 5th or is it the 3rd of February? It's the 3rd, I think.
The 3rd in the, go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah, Ms. Kennedy, go ahead. You can describe it and invite people to attend.
Thank you. Yeah, February 3rd, it's from 5 to 7. It's in the Eagle River Town Center, which is basically the library building, and it's in the community room toward just right past the library front doors. Thanks.
So then we have on the 15th, the assembly meeting that's intended to introduce a plan map proposal and ordinance. And then, so the deadline for the introduction, the regular introduction, would be on the 4th of February. Because of the town hall that's happening in Eagle River on the 3rd, it might be that we have a special meeting on the 7th or 8th to take up the conversation again, but ultimately we will have an item introduced sometime between the 4th and 11th so that it's on the agenda for introduction for the 15th of February. Then we're going to have 2 public hearings on this item, February 24th and March the 1st. In between the 2 public hearings, we'll have a work session on the 25th to incorporate any other elements that we've learned in the public hearing. The first one, as we move towards the final public hearing on the 1st with adoption sometime on or about that date. So that's the timeline moving forward, and the next opportunity to participate is tomorrow night at the Lusac Library Building.
There is one more statement that got put in the Q&A, so I'll read that out loud.
Okay, go ahead.
It says, I'm in Independence Park. We are Abbott Loop. We shop at the Abbott Town Center and are part of the Abbott Loop Community Council. This is just a comment, not a question, but we also get together with and do some shopping in South Anchorage. My preference so far is for map 6 because it keeps Abbott Loop pretty much intact. It has Hillside and Girdwood with South Anchorage instead of with Eagle River, and it keeps Muldoon compact.
All right, and all of these comments will be tabulated into some form of the record as we move forward. Thank you for all of the members of the public for your participation and your questions in the Q&A. Again, thank you for the map drawers. Thank you to RDI, Dennis and Ashley, for your hard work in getting this material ready for everybody. Just go to reapportionanc.org for details. It's all there. You can sort through it. And with that, I want to say have a good night and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, everybody.